Salve! Welcome to Beginner's Latin Lesson 16. This Latin lesson will be slightly different from previous ones. Instead of discussing the Latin language, we will be exploring a topic in linguistics, more specifically, a feature of verbs, known as the grammatical mood. The material in this video will be drawn on heavily in future lessons, so I've done my best to be as thorough as possible in this lesson. Also, the ideas discussed in this video are quite abstract, so if you feel there are any holes in my explanations, please don't hesitate to leave a question, and I'll do my best to give a more in-depth explanation. This lesson is about grammatical moods or modality. Modality is a property of a verb that allows a speaker or a writer of the language to express their intention or attitudes behind a verb. The grammatical mood used to state a fact is different from the grammatical mood used to express a hypothetical statement. We switch between grammatical moods all the time in spoken and written English without giving it a second thought. Some verbs have morphologically distinct forms, that is to say, the verb used inflects or changes its form depending on the mood it expresses. However, there are also moods that do not behave in this way. In this case, the intention of the verb is deduced from the context. Before we discuss the specifics of various moods, let's recap the properties of finite verbs introduced in Lesson 3. We have person. This describes the relationship of the subject of the verb to the narrator. If the narrator is referring to themselves or a group of people to which they belong, they will use the first person. We interpret this in English as I do something or we do something. If the subject of the verb is the audience whom the narrator is addressing, they will typically use the second person, but in some languages the third person singular is also used in this case. And finally, the third person is used by the narrator to refer to an individual or individuals who are neither themselves nor the audience. The idea of person is similar to the idea of primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. The first person is analogous to the primary source because it comes directly from the horse's mouth. The number property distinguishes between finite verbs for which the subject is singular, as in to say one person performs the action, and verbs for which the subject is plural, where more than one person performs the action. Tense and aspect are related concepts, but not entirely the same. Tense refers to the time at which an action takes place, either in the past, present, or future. Aspect is more nuanced and tells us if this event is completed or not completed in that time interval. There are two voices in both Latin and English, the passive and active voices. The passive voice describes an action being done to the subject. The active voice describes the subject doing an action. Note that although English and Latin only have two voices, there are some languages which even have 5. We can now slot in grammatical mood as the 6th property of a finite verb. Unlike the other 5 properties, this property is slightly harder to characterize. A general definition of a grammatical mood or modality, as I mentioned before, is a way of changing a verb according to whether it expresses a factual statement, a hypothetical statement, a command, an exclamation, a question, a wish, or a desire. I think, as with most concepts, this is best illustrated with examples. Of all the grammatical moods, of which there are many, they can be generalized as being one of 2 types. Those which tell us what something is or what something is not, as in to say those which express a statement of fact. The most common of these moods is the indicative mood. However, there are others such as the energetic mood, used in Arabic and other languages of the same family, which gives an added emphasis to a statement, and the aggressive mood in the Finnish language, which is reserved for expressing strong emotions. On the other hand, we have moods which are used to express uncertainty. The action proposed by a verb in such a mood might not have occurred, but it might be the speaker or the writer's wish for it to occur, as in the subjunctive mood. They might ask for the action to take place in the interrogative mood, or demand that the action takes place in the imperative mood. Up until now, all verbs we have conjugated have been in the indicative mood. In the last part of this lesson, we will cover 4 moods: the conditional, the interrogative, the subjunctive, and the imperative. First of all, we have the conditional, which is used to express events whose outcome is dependent on another. In English, there is no specific morphology for marking the conditional mood. Instead, we typically use words like would, could, and should. An example of the conditional in English is, the man would have arrived on time if the train had not been late. So here you have the idea that the man's punctuality was predicated on the train not being late. You may have been introduced to the conditional as a tense as opposed to a mood while learning other languages. Here is why the conditional is not a tense but in fact a mood. The word tense, which comes from the Latin tempus, via an old French word that signifies a time, or more specifically, the time at which an event occurs relative to the time at which the speaker narrates the event. Imagine Livia is going to the town at midday. Imagine I'm talking to you about this event at 8 a.m. in the morning. I would say Livia will go to the town, future tense. If I'm talking to you at midday, I will say that Livia is on her way to the town, present tense. And if I'm talking to you about this event in the afternoon, depending on how the events of the day unfold, I might say Livia has been to the town. This is a basic explanation of relative tenses. The conditional is not a tense because it is independent of time. We have future conditionals, such as you might be able to get the job in the future, provided you achieve the correct qualifications. We also have past conditionals. You could have caught the bus had you been quicker to get ready this morning. The interrogative mood is used for posing questions. In English, when a speaker asks a question, they will typically change the intonation of their voice or invert the word order of a sentence. We also mark questions using the question mark. Here are some examples of interrogatives in English. Where are you? How do you get to the museum? What did you do? Why aren't you here? The next mood we're going to examine is the imperative. The imperative is used to give direct commands. Examples of the imperative in English are call them, run faster, come here, ask her, and don't do that. And finally, we have the subjunctive mood. This mood is a feature of Latin and also the Romance languages which are derived from Latin. It is used to express uncertainties. It can be trickier to spot because unlike the other three tenses we have just discussed, it has multiple functions. As we learn more advanced Latin, you will see that there are specific conjunctions that are always followed by a verb in the subjunctive mood. Examples of the subjunctive in English are, he wished it had been different. This sentence expresses a wish or a desire for something which could have occurred in the past, but did not. This sentence is in the subjunctive, but it's also a past tense sentence. In English, the subjunctive is often used in that clauses, such as I would hope that, it is important that, and I would recommend that. I very much doubt that will happen is another example of a that clause, subjunctive phrase in English. Subjunctives are also used in sentences which begin with the phrases if I were, if we were, or if it were the case. One example being, if I were younger, I would have taken that opportunity. Latin has the following grammatical moods, the indicative, the imperative, and the subjunctive. In Lesson 17, we'll explore Latin imperatives. Thank you for watching this lesson. I hope you found it informative.